Welcome back to natural language processing. The next slide set is going to be about information extraction. So what is information extraction? Well, it's one of the most interesting problems in natural language processing, and it's also one of the most practically useful. We usually start from some unstructured or semi-structured data. Unstructured refers to plain text, and semi-structured refers to text that may have some tables or some metadata. So some examples of unstructured data include news stories, scientific papers, or maybe resumes. And we are trying to extract entities, events, and relations from those documents. So for example, we want to figure out who did what, when, and where, and why. And we may be able to use this information to build a knowledge base. For example, which companies develop what kind of products, or which papers are about which particular scientific topics. So what is a named entity? Well, there are different types of those. The most common categories are people, locations, organizations. Organizations can be further divided into things like sports teams, newspapers, let's say New York Times, companies like IBM or Microsoft. We can also have geopolitical entities like countries and continents and so on. Named entities can be ambiguous. So for example, the word London can be a person, like the last name, city, a country. It's a country by metonymy. If you remember from one of the earlier lectures, we can say something like London decided not to get involved in the war, where London really stands for the country that it is the capital of. So named entities are very useful because they can be used for interfaces to databases, question answering systems, and so on. In addition to named entities, we want to be able to extract things like times and events. So times can be absolute expressions, like for example, January the 7th, or relative expressions, for example, last night or next Thursday. We also want to be able to extract events and so on. So a lot of the information extraction tasks can be modeled as sequence labeling problems. Part of speech tagging is another sequence labeling problem. Named entity recognition is one. Semantic role labeling that we're going to talk about in the future is also a sequence labeling problem. In sequence labeling, the input is a sequence of words, for example, W1, W2, W3, and the output is a set of labeled words. For example, W2 is a noun that corresponds to a person, or maybe W2 and W3 combined are a sequence of two nouns that correspond to a person, and so on. So most of the time, people use classification methods for sequence labeling. So we can use the categories of the previous tokens as features when we classify the next one. And the direction matters. Sometimes it's better to do this left to right. In other cases, it may be better to do it right to left. And you can also do it bidirectionally, going both directions at the same time. So one of the most interesting problems in information extraction is named entity recognition, or NER as it is known in the literature. It consists of two parts, segmentation and classification. So segmentation is about determining which words belong to a specific named entity. So here in the sentence, Brazilian football legend Pelé's condition has improved according to a Thursday evening statement from a Sao Paulo hospital. We have three named entities, and they are segmented properly here. The second task in named entity recognition is classification, and that is once we have segmented the text into named entities and the rest of the sentence, we want to label each of the named entities with its type. So there are different ways to do this. We can use gazetteers, essentially long lists of geographical locations or people's names. We can look at the spelling of the individual words. We can look at the words that are adjacent or the presence of specific words, for example, the president or miss or mister, as hints as to how to classify the named entity. So this particular sentence here can be labeled in the following way. Pelé is a person, Thursday evening is a time expression, and finally Sao Paulo is a location. So here's some more examples. We can have organizations. Albert Einstein Hospital is an organization. Thursday night, again, is a time expression. And then we have an event. Pelé was relocated. In this case, we have an action verb, relocate, which has a certain set of arguments. In this case, Pelé as the person being relocated. Information extraction and name entity recognition is very commonly used in the biomedical domain. So some examples include gene labeling. So here's an example of a sentence. BRCA1 and BRCA2 are human genes that produce tumor suppressor proteins. In this case, we want to label the two instances of genes, BRCA1 and BRCA2, as genes. So this is the end of the section on information extraction. We're going to continue with some additional topics related to information extraction in the next segment.